Hello and welcome to OCEANIA Weekly. I'm Stephanie Greenfield. North Korea says an Australian student who had been detained for several days before being released had been spying for news outlets. Alex Sigley, 29, was reported missing in late June but was freed on Thursday after Swedish officials in Pyongyang met with North Korean government. One of the websites to publish Sigley's writings, NK News, has rejected Pyongyang's claims that he spied for them. It said his columns only presented an apolitical view of life in Pyongyang. Mr. Sigley, a fluent Korean speaker, had been living in Pyongyang while studying a master's at Kim Il-sung University and running a tourism business. Mr. Sigley has not commented on why he was detained. Following his release, he flew back to Japan where his wife lives. A Korean man has died in Arthur's Pass National Park this weekend, and indications suggest he may have fallen down a steep bluff. Emergency services launched a search and rescue operation for the 24-year-old last night after he separated from a walking companion. A police spokeswoman said the search teams had located the man's body. He first went missing yesterday afternoon, and after the search was postponed last night, it continued from first light today. He was last seen on the Beorley Spur track. The Department of Conservation describes the track as 6 kilometres long and takes about 2.5 hours one way. The Salvation Army will be offering free GP clinics at a West Auckland centre to help break down the barriers to healthcare for its clients. 4 free GP clinics will be running throughout July at the Salvation Army's Waitakere Centre, which is one of their busiest centres. Ministry of Health data shows that 1 in 7 adults don't go and see their GP because it's too expensive. Common winter illnesses are anticipated at the GP clinics. Salvation Army says that we have a number of rough sleepers or people in homeless situations who haven't been to the doctor for a long time. The Salvation Army wants to support them. Although it's free for children, the Salvation Army says that many adults don't have the transports to get their children there. A mass protest in Auckland last Saturday has seen around 200 people march up Queen Street, angered by the dumping of dredged sediment in the ocean off Great Barrier Island. Coastal Resources Limited has been granted consent by the Environmental Protection Authority. This permits them to deposit 250,000 cubic metres of sediment 25 kilometres east of Great Barrier Island each year for 35 years. That's 5 times the amount it was previously allowed to dump. The sediment is dredged from Auckland and Waikato marinas, and the increase is partly due to dredging work that needs to be carried out for the America's Cup in Auckland. But protesters say the dumping will destroy the environment. Auckland Central MP Nikki Kay says the protests today show the depth of opposition around marine dumping near the island. A popular central Otago tourist town has a dirty problem: its air quality. The National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research has been monitoring Aerotown's air pollution through winter, and it has found some concerning results. It turns out that one of the most picturesque places in New Zealand has some of the worst air pollution in Australasia. This winter, NZAA installed 22 air quality monitors around the central Otago township, while another 21 monitors are inside residents' homes where smog can seep in. Data from the monitors revealed that the town's air quality breached New Zealand standards 8 times this winter, when the outside temperature dropped below zero, opening the door for potential health problems. A Kiwi environmental charity is aiming to plant more than 12,000 trees as a report into the climate change indicates it's the best way to fight global warming. The study says planting 1 trillion trees is the cheapest solution, and former Young New Zealand of the Year, Sam Judd, is ready to do more than his bit. Judd is working with Waikato businesses and charities, as well as the Waikato Regional Council, to plant 12,500 trees by the end of Saturday. The co-founder of Sustainable Coastlines joined forces with community groups. They spent Friday at Lovells Road in Cambridge to meet their goal. Supported by local schools and the Black Sticks hockey team, Judd says the efforts of nearly 150 volunteers put them ahead of their original target of 10,000 trees. A defence expert says New Zealand's relationship with China has been reset after Ron Mark's first overseas trip there. The Defence Minister has returned to New Zealand after spending the week in China, aiming to boost the relationship between the two nations. Last year, Mr. Mark threw caution to the wind about China, including its behaviour in the South China Sea. However, this week he said the defence relationship between the two nations was getting stronger. New Zealand and China have signed a memorandum of arrangement concerning defence cooperation. That covers areas of common interest, including humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, as well as international peace cooperation activities. The Victoria State Government says an expansion of Melbourne's drug injecting room trial will help stop more addicts shooting up in their inner city streets. A new centre at North Richmond opened its doors on Sunday, more than a year into the controversial 18-month trial. The trial has provoked outcry from some nearby residents, including for its proximity to the Richmond West Primary School. There have been more than 60,000 visits to the centre, and nearly 3,000 people have used it to inject drugs, mostly heroin, since the opening in June last year. The number of fully immunised Australian children has hit a record level, with close to 95% vaccinated against deadly diseases. New data for the March quarter reveals immunisation rates for all 5-year-olds is 94.78%, up from 94.67% in the December quarter. Australia has world-leading vaccination rates for children, with the latest figures well above global vaccination coverage of 85%. Health Minister Greg Hunt said immunisation saves and protects lives, making it important to keep promoting the benefits of vaccines. As Europe sweltered in record high temperatures, the United Nations has said that the rising heat due to climate change could lead to the loss of 80 million jobs by 2030, with poorer countries hit the worst. A temperature rise of 1.5 degrees Celsius could lead to a 2.2% drop in working hours, equal to 80 million full-time jobs. This would cost the global economy $2.4 trillion, according to projections by the UN International Labour Organization. The ILO said people would be unable to work due to the health risks posed by higher temperatures. The World Health Organization has said heat stress linked to climate change is likely to cause 38,000 extra deaths a year worldwide between 2030 and 2050. A high tea event for celebrating culture and diversity through Asian cultural dances and dialogue by New Zealand Asian Society was held on Saturday the 6th of July at Fickling Convention Centre in Auckland.
Tony Kim is the director of World Television and is also the director of Multicultural Television, K-TV, Happy TV, so many channels. He's on my committee. And then Diane, me too, right? He's always filming. They're wonderful people from Korea. Great.
This gathering was done in partnership with the Auckland Multicultural Society, which promotes educational and social activities as a means of increasing understanding among cultures, thus strengthening New Zealand society. Traditional dishes and cuisine were shared from every community. Folk dancers performed wearing their traditional costumes. Audiences were asked to participate and dance with the performers, and everyone enjoyed the celebration. New Zealand Asia Association's representative event is Viva Electica, which is held once every 2 years. The concept of Viva Electica is to take this one step further by showcasing fusion performances, where dancers from 2 or more diverse cultures bring together elements into a single dance. Labour MP Michael Wood was interviewed by Multicultural Television Director Tony Kim.
Well, yes, I think there are a range of issues we need to look at. There's getting those weapons off the streets, and we're going to be looking at another round of firearms law reform as well. So, for example, at the moment, we have no firearms register. So we actually don't know which guns people have. And that means that if there's a violent or person in the community that the police are worried about, they actually have no record of how many guns that person might have. So I think that's something we need to look at closely, and fairly soon the government will be announcing another round of reform of the gun laws, and that will look at issues like those kind of things as well, to make the community as safe as possible. We are looking at the issue of hate speech. It's quite a sensitive area because in this country we very much value the general ability to be able to speak freely. That's very important we preserve that. But in any civilised society you do have some limits on what is appropriate speech. You cannot incite violence with your speech, for example. So our Minister of Justice, the Honourable Andrew Little, is conducting a review of those hate speech laws to make sure that they are fit for purpose in terms of our community remaining a safe place for everyone. But then I think the other area of work really, it's not so much an individual policy, but it is doing a lot of education work to make sure that we do not have people harbouring prejudiced and ignorant attitudes. Sometimes, unfortunately, you can go onto social media and very quickly find people who have, frankly, terrible views about people from different races and cultures.
Actually, I've seen it.
I'm sure you have.
Like a movie.
Yes.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, we don't want those views to have a place in our country.
Now we're going to cross over to Voice of America.
Protesters have been outside this detention center for nearly a week because the facility they were held in was mostly destroyed in the bombing, along with dozens of lives. These signs say things like, "We only wait for death," and "No humanity." The protesters are demanding release and safe passage out of Libya. Hours after last week's bombing, one man makes a special plea before police cut off the interview.
We're not going to stay here, and we need to cross the Mediterranean Sea. It does not mean that we're going to terrorism. We escape our country.
Kilometers away, but still within earshot of Libya's ongoing war, other families are not detained, but also have no place to go. Most of these families fled war and genocide in Sudan. After arriving in Libya, they were later kicked out of emergency housing. Their Tripoli homes are still in a war zone.
So the house completely is not good. There is no door, there is no window, so it's not safe to stay.
At a detention center in the suburbs, women and children languish, hoping to be freed. Some fled extreme poverty in Nigeria and are victims of human trafficking. If they don't pay traffickers tens of thousands of dollars for their passage to Europe, they believe they will be cursed, says Mercy.
Either it will die, or it will be mad, or it will be useless. It cannot even do anything. It will be crazy.
It is getting much harder to cross to Europe, she says, because seaports are being closed and the growing anti-immigration sentiment in the West. But like many migrants, Mercy says, for her, there is no going back. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Tripoli.
Thank you for joining us at Oceania Weekly. I'll see you next week.